This is Jeff with Shout Out Minnesota, and we are here with
Ken Shamrock.
Ken. Thanks for joining us tonight. We're at St. Croix Casino, Turtle Lake, for MMA Fight Night tonight. We'll talk a little bit about yourself. You've been around MMA for a long time, and of course a UFC Hall of Famer. Earned that right, definitely. Talk a little bit about your career a little bit, and we'll go from there.
I started over in Japan, before UFC came out, and I fought there for about 3 years. Became a world champion over there in Japan. When I became a world champion was right around the same time that they started the UFC. About probably, I don't know, somewhere between 6 months, 4 to 6 months. I had just become a world champion over in Japan, and the first mixed martial arts champion over in Japan. I was the first one over there to capture an actual belt for a mixed martial arts title. And then of course here a couple months later, UFC started up, and I saw that at another level, because people mix up the terminology a little bit, because they look at that and they say, well, that was Japan and they weren't, with closed fists and all that. Well, let's make sure we get this right now, because mixed martial arts is mixed martial arts when we talk about mixed skills going into the ring. Whether it's open hand striking, whether it's closed fists with gloves on,
Right.
and ground techniques and all that stuff, that's mixed martial arts. When you take away the gloves and you allow the gloves to be gone, that's no holds barred. It's a different terminology, and people mix it up when they say, well, it's not the same thing. Well, yes, UFC in today's standard was the same thing as what Pancras was in that day, because it was a mixed martial arts setup. The very first UFC now is correct. It is not the same thing. The thing that I was involved was, we fought 4 times in one night, 3 times in one night, against guys we didn't even know, with no time limit, no rules, and bare knuckle. No rules, anything goes. So, yeah, that era, when I jumped into it, was definitely different than what it is today and what I actually started out doing over in Japan.
Yeah, and like I said, we were just talking about how it's progressed along with the weight classes, and a lot more rules and a lot more things added to the competition to ensure its survival. But let's talk about how UFC athletes are role models, and how you've become a role model to upcoming athletes.
When you first start out in whatever you're in, when you have people that follow you and look up to you, you are a role model, whether you like it or not. You have stepped into that position, and there's a responsibility that comes along with that. People are buying tickets or paying money for TV sponsors to show it on TV, and then they pay you that money. That's now you become a role model to people who are watching, people that look up to you. And so I think that's a huge responsibility that a lot of us, when we first start out, don't want it, but as time goes on, you realize it's something that you have to accept if you're going to continue to keep going in the sport and continue to keep making money at the career that you've chosen. Then you have to accept that responsibility. And I did. Very shortly after I started out, I realized that people were looking up to me, and they were looking at me, and the things that I did and how I handled myself. I was going to be responsible for other human beings, treating other human beings differently. So I felt like I needed to handle myself with the highest respect, and so that people could see what it is that I'm doing and be able to treat other people the same. So one of the reasons why I do what I do now, traveling to these places here to watch these young fighters come up and come down and support them, is I believe that the only way that MMA is going to survive is by people like myself who have paved the road, that turn around and help these young athletes get recognized and support them when they're fighting.
Right, and they definitely need the guidance and the role models, like you were saying, to help them along. Another thing I want to touch on too is a lot of your career has been highlighted by certain matches and stuff like that. One comes to mind is Royce Gracie. The super fight, the one that came to a draw, that had to be pretty grueling. Can you tell us a little bit about that fight?
Yeah, you know, we fought the first time and he caught me with the gi choke, and it just frustrated me because I remember they took away my shoes and said that it was a weapon, and I'd always had shoes even when I was in Japan. So when they had actually taken them away and it was supposed to be no holds barred, you know, there's no time limit, there were no rules other than no eye gouging, no biting, but everything else was good to go. And then the day before they took away my shoes, and I didn't understand what they were doing, but I said, okay, whatever. And I went in there and I found out that it was very difficult to move around on that canvas, especially when you're always wearing wrestling shoes, and then all of a sudden they're gone. It took away a huge part of my balance. But then I think the biggest thing that made me angry and fueled the rivalry between me and Royce was the fact is that he choked me with his gi. And I remember just sitting there thinking, he just choked me with a gi. How is that not a weapon? So that stuck in my mind, and I remember that fueled my anger and my rage towards trying to get a rematch with them, because I really felt like they took one from me, that they put one over on me.
Yeah. And obviously a lot's happened since then. So many fights. You've been around for a long time, and the sport itself has progressed a long way. Can we talk a little bit about cross-training, because that's really what separated the beginning stages of UFC to what it is now. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge difference, because guys were having a struggling trying to find out how to get in shape for two really extremely hard sports to actually get in shape for in the first place, which is wrestling or grappling, and then kickboxing, boxing. I mean, those are hard things to get in shape for just by themselves. Now you're putting them both together, and so a lot of people were struggling and trying to figure that out. Me, I was always in great shape. I remember even when I first started out, I think my third match that I had, maybe it was a little bit longer, maybe it was a fifth match. It was against Funaki, and we went 46 minutes, 2 out of 3 falls. And I remember I did that match, and I was just blowing through it. And I remember he was gassing him, catching him the third time around because he just got tired. And his skills were much better than mine, but I was able to just wear him out. And then, of course, I have other fights that people talk about 36 minutes straight with Royce. And I felt fresh. He saw me get up, and it was like I was fresh and ready to go again. And they had to carry him out of the ring. And this is a guy that's done his whole life. He has a history of family behind it. So for me, the conditioning part was, I was just a tremendous athlete. I had great cardio, and being even as big as I was very flexible and oxygen to no end. So that played a real big factor in me being able to do the things that I did in my sport, because I think a lot of people would look and go, okay, let me push him hard, and he's going to blow up quick. His muscles will get full, he'll get tight, and he'll slow down. That just didn't work with me.
That's great. That's great. Another thing I want to talk about too, which is a big thing, is the Lion's Den. West Coast. You put it on the map, obviously, but tell us a little bit about the Lion's Den itself and how it got started.
Well, I was over in Japan, and I would fly over to Japan, and I would stay over there, and I would stay in the dojo, and I would train, and then I'd fight. And then I would stay in Japan until the next time we fought, and I would fight, and then I would fly back home. And the reason why I was staying in Japan during those times is because when I came back to the States, there was nowhere to train. Because this is before UFC, before anybody understood that a wrestler could take a boxer down and you could learn to fight that way. There was no gyms that did that. I remember going to different gyms trying to spar with guys, say, I'm going to take you down. They're going to go, huh? No, we don't do that here. No, I know, but we're going to do this. No, we don't do that here. It's like they just wouldn't break protocol. Right. It was like, you just don't do that. And even wrestlers, when I would say, okay, I want to strike, I want you to take me down, they're like, no, man, you're going to hit me? I've got gloves on, I'm not going to hit you hard. No. It's like you couldn't get people to think past these boundaries that were set for centuries. So I had to actually bring guys in and develop them myself, so that I had people to train with when I was in the States. But really where I learned a lot of my crafts is I would stay in Japan for that 4 weeks before my next fight, and I would stay in the dojo and train the whole time, so that I was picking up things that I needed to in order to compete early on. And then I would go back home, and then I would grab guys from different places and go come down to the gym. I want to work with you guys to teach you these different things. And I had 3 guys with me at the time, and I remember working with them, and they started learning. And then pretty soon I got to a point to where I could at least get some rounds in, where I could have them switch out on me every minute, and every fresh guy would come in. And I was actually starting to get some work in there. At that point, I realized that, you know, I actually have a few guys here that I could fight, and that Japan was looking to maybe me bring some guys in from the U.S. And I said, yeah. And I remember sitting in front of the TV, and I was watching a program, and it was an Animal Kingdom program, and it talked about the King of the Jungle, you know, the lions. And I remember the first thing I saw with a lion when they were circling it, and they'd run it into one lion, like they'd circle it and run into one lion in the tall grass, and that lion would jump it. And when it put its hooks in the horns, or right behind the horns, they'd lock the claws in, and it would bite its neck, and it pulled it down like into its guard, to where the back claws clamped on also, and locked it down, and then it would just bite its neck. And I really looked at it, and I said, that looks so much like grappling. And I said, you know what, lion's dead. Lion's dead. And so that's where it really stuck, was when I actually watched that.
Okay. Your proudest moment in your career?
There's 2 of them. Actually, there's a lot of them, but 2 of them are. One of them is, you know, being able to be the actual in Japan before UFC was ever around or any of this stuff ever started. There was people from all over the world, and we had this tournament. It was about six months. It was called Eye of the Tiger, and for 6 months they were grooming and putting people and bringing people from different countries to build this tournament, this 16-man tournament, to crown the first mixed martial arts champion in Japan. And so I ended up qualifying for that tournament. Actually, I went undefeated. I mean, I fought I don't know how many people, and I was actually seeded #1 in the tournament. And I fought guys from South Africa, and Australia, and Germany, people from all over Japan. And it was a 2-day tournament. It went from 6 months to qualifying, and then we had a 2-day tournament with the 16 men that had qualified in that 6 months, okay, to crown that champion, and I won it. Nice. And that's probably the biggest one, and probably the next one that's just right beside it. It would have to be when they actually had developed a belt. Instead of the tournament where you were fighting guys, you know where they were coming from. You could be matched up, tough guy. One guy could match up with an easy guy. And you just didn't know how things were going to turn out. And you know, unfortunately for me, my rivalry was with the guys that were the promoters. So it seemed like every time I got flipped a bracket, I had a tough bracket, and we just never got to meet. So I remember they developed a super fight. To take away the politics and really put the 2 guys together that belong together. And so that would probably be my first moment, because I remember I thought I won the fight. I think everybody else would look at that and say, yeah, that was definitely a dominating performance by a guy that didn't have the experience that they had, but I was able to figure out a way to negate his ability to dominate with the submissions. And I did go on the ground with him, and I kept him from doing what he needed to do, and I blasted him in several different opportunities, and I believe I won the fight. But because of the way it was set up, there was no judges, there was none of that stuff. They called it a draw. But soon after that, I got to fight Dan Severn, who won the Ultimate, which is the winners of the year all then fought in a tournament, kind of like Japan, where you had to win to be in the tournament. These guys all had to win to be in this Ultimate tournament. They had to win the tournament in order to qualify to be in that at the end of the year. And Dan was one of the guys that qualified, and he fought the other guys that had qualified to be in that tournament. He won it, and then I fought him. Finally, the very first time anybody ever wore a belt for an MMA event was me. And so those are things that will never change. I was the very first MMA fighter to capture a belt, an actual belt for an MMA fighter in Japan and also in the United States.
Okay. One other thing I wanted to ask you, because switching over to the WWE, there's not been many that have done that. One comes to mind is Brock Lesnar. What are some of the similarities and differences from actually jumping from UFC or from MMA to WWE?
Well, I just think for me, it's being able to entertain people, be able to understand the crowd, understand media, understand how people be prepared for an event, even going through people asking you questions and getting in the way of your training, and you have to promote fights. And you think the minute that fighters truly understand that, then they start becoming better at being able to prepare themselves to go into a fight. When they try to not do that stuff or get pissed off about it, they end up messing up their training regimen. They get things get in the way, instead of realizing that's part of what we do and it's a part of what we have to do. And you have to make that as a plan, part of your training plan. And I think when people realize that, then it's okay. And I think being in the world of wrestling, you understand that. So when you go into fighting and always people in your face with cameras and talking to you, you realize it's okay. It's part of the game.
Okay. Well, we got a big night tonight. A lot of fighters come here to fight, and we're anxious to see some good matches tonight. But before we go, I just want you to address the fans, the Ken Shamrock fans, on whatever you want to tell them and what you want them to know as we exit out.
Well, yeah, listen, I think everybody realizes who Ken Shamrock is. I'm not a guy that lays in the grass and is satisfied with my spoils. I continue to keep trying to push the envelope. I keep trying to do things that nobody else can do. And it's just what fills me up. It's what makes me happy. And so I've got another fight coming up. I can't speak on who it's going to be, but it's definitely going to be somebody that is going to be a fun fight for me. It's going to be a fun fight for the fans. And I do this for the fans. I do it for myself, but I also do it for the fans. I love entertaining the fans. So don't miss this, and I'll be announcing it soon. God bless.